Hello. Oh my goodness. I apologize in advance for the lighting. I feel like I cannot get it to look super good, but that's okay. Just it's like making really harsh shadows on my eyebrows. Not the point, I know. Just, I also have a cold that I'm recovering from. I wanted to film this video at like the start of Christmas break, but I have been sick, and so I'm doing this very last minute because I wanted to get a video out before the end of the year. I didn't want to go a whole year, calendar year, without uploading something. That made me very sad. So anyway, here we are. Hi, it's been a minute. I hope this video kind of explains why, as you'll be able to see from the title, kind of what I've been going through the last couple years now. 2 years coming up on since I've had a baby, which is crazy. I feel like the first year went by really fast. The first year went by slow. Everyone said it would go by fast. It did not for me. I think the first year went by very slow, but the second year has gone by very fast, and it's been confusing. If you clicked on this, thank you. I have no idea what the algorithm is gonna do. I am assuming my videos are gonna be like not pushed out very much, which is fine. That's not the point of my channel, but if you are watching, hi. I've missed this. If you're new, hello. What I just said does not apply to you. I've missed you too if you're new. Welcome. I'm not gonna preamble too long. My yappiness has not improved in the last 2 years, I can promise you that. Or the last year since I've uploaded, but 2 years since I've like more regularly uploaded. But yeah, as you can tell from the title of the video, I kind of just wanted to talk about like why I've been gone and why I've been struggling with this specific thing. Basically, my hair. I'm not happy with my hair. Basically, I wanted to kind of talk about my experience with postpartum anxiety and I guess general anxiety, which is what I was actually diagnosed with. That sounds so intense. It's not that intense. So many of us have general anxiety. But yeah, and like kind of talk about it to say how it applied to like my writing, but also just to kind of share my experience in general, because I have learned with me, like getting through the really hard times, hearing other people tell their story and like just continuing to normalize it and to make you not feel so crazy and to make you not feel like something was so wrong with you. And most importantly for me, to know I was gonna get better and that it was gonna get better. Because it has gotten better. And so if I can be that voice for somebody, whether you're going through it or maybe you're going to go through it in the future, you know, you're thinking about having kids, or like, you know, somebody, whatever, or maybe it's not related to postpartum at all, maybe it's just general anxiety. I just wanted to share my story and hopefully it helps somebody out there, which is the whole point of my videos, the whole point of me wanting to write, make us feel less alone. So I thought I would start with kind of just to give you a layout of the video. Hopefully I don't get too off track. I took notes. We're not free in, what do you call it, free ball? Free ball in this? Is that an expression? I don't even know. I have an outline. I'm hoping it helps with my rambles. So yeah, I thought first I would talk about sort of my experience, what it looked like for me, how it affected my writing or just any hobby in general, including editing and uploading videos or filming videos, why it happened, like kind of talking about the why we go through this. I'm not an expert, but just sort of what I've learned and what I did to help and where I am at now. But yeah, so to just kind of walk through it. So I had my baby in January of 2023, so almost 2 years ago now, which is insane. And honestly, it started off great. I feel like I had, you know, some anxiety in my pregnancy. I was really afraid to lose my pregnancy since I had just come from miscarrying, and I've known lots of people who've lost their pregnancies. I mean, we all do. I wouldn't say I had perinatal depression, I think it's called, when you're, or depression, sorry, anxiety. I don't think I had that when you are diagnosed with like extreme anxiety during pregnancy. I think I had normal anxiety. It didn't really affect my day-to-day. Though I definitely was very anxious that something was going to go wrong and that I wouldn't know, because that's kind of what happened with my first pregnancy, where my pregnancy wasn't viable and I did not know until my first ultrasound. So I was just really afraid that something was going to happen to her while I was pregnant, and I could not wait for her to be born so that I could see with my own eyes that she was okay. I never felt, like a lot of people have said, that when they were pregnant they were afraid to give birth because the baby feels so safe inside. I never felt that way. I always felt she was more at risk being inside than outside. And I could not wait to not be pregnant anymore and not have to worry about that. I think for me, my postpartum anxiety didn't really kick off until, I want to say, I don't know exactly when. It wasn't an immediate thing. Like, it wasn't a switch, so it kind of crept up. But I was one of the rare people, I think, that had a really positive newborn experience. Natasha was a pretty easy newborn. She really didn't cry that much except for when she was hungry or if someone else was holding her. She really didn't like to be held by other people, which was fine by me because I loved holding her. So we feel very, very lucky that that was our experience. I know not everyone has that experience. And so it started off on a positive note, and I think that's how it crept up on me so much, because it's not like it's not like she came out with colic and like I could feel my anxiety growing from a specific incident. Everything was fine, and yet it kept getting worse, and so that part was really confusing to me. But just to kind of give examples, I did have some obviously right when she was born. So like when she was just born, I did not sleep very well in the hospital, and not because the nurses did a lot of checks, which they do, but every time I would lightly wake up, I would check her breathing. Every time someone else was holding her, I started getting scared that she was going to stop breathing and they're not going to notice it. So I really only ever felt safe if I was holding her and if I was awake. So not conducive to a restful postpartum experience. I think I started to first realize something was wrong when I was about 2 weeks postpartum. My in-laws wanted to come over and see her because we kind of went home from the hospital, and then we wanted sort of like a bubble and like to get used to having a baby. And so we told our family and friends like that we just wanted to take a couple weeks once we were home to get settled in before we have visitors come again, because we had visitors in the hospital. But so my in-laws reached out about coming over, and at first I was like, of course. And then I'm trying to remember, but like that day I just kept feeling worse and worse, to the point I felt like I was almost gonna have a panic attack. Like I felt so worked up, and I couldn't pinpoint why, because it's not like I don't love my in-laws, I do, and it's not like I don't trust them, but I just felt in that moment that if our safety bubble that we'd built for ourselves was popped, that it would be like the end of the world. And I just felt so incredibly anxious at the thought of somebody else holding her when I still was like so freshly postpartum. And so we ended up asking them not to come. We needed more time, and so we canceled on them. But it was strange for me because I had never felt that way before, and I couldn't pinpoint exactly what was wrong, other than just, I wasn't ready for other people to hold her at length, which is what I knew would happen if people came to visit us. So that kind of was like the first inkling that maybe something was wrong, or not wrong, but just like off, because I never anticipated feeling that way. Then it just kind of steadily got worse, and so for me, my anxiety pretty much was exclusively invasive thoughts. Now, if you have struggled with invasive thoughts, I'm so sorry, because oh my god, I felt like I was losing it, is the best way. And like, I so badly did not want to have mental health struggles, because obviously when you're pregnant, all your doctors are constantly telling you is to like, here are the signs to look out for, here's when to reach out for help, this is very normal, this is expected. And I think I so badly wanted to continue having a positive experience because, like I said, the first couple weeks were magical. And it's like I was resisting the thought that something could be wrong. And so I was trying so hard to not make it a thing. And I was kind of lying to myself, but I'll just describe what I mean. Like, I could not go down the stairs holding her without not only like thinking, oh, don't drop her. I would picture dropping her. I would imagine what would happen to a newborn if you drop it and all the horrific details. Like, those images would flash through my brain, and it was every time. There was no break. And I would hear a creak on the house and I would picture the house falling in. I would be sitting next to the window and I would imagine a stray bullet coming in and shooting me or her in the head, and what that would look like. And like, so that is how the invasive thoughts affected me. And I can't explain enough how constant it was. It was constant, and I've just never dealt with anything like that before. And I just kept thinking like, oh, Haley, stop thinking about that. And like, you know, I didn't even peg it as postpartum anxiety. I just kind of thought I was being silly, like, or just like, you know, obviously new moms worry, but just like the extremeness of it was so shocking. It got to the point where I couldn't watch things with children being hurt or with like reading news articles about horrible events. I couldn't do any of that because it would feel so real, as if it was happening to me, that it would send me into like, you know, the way my therapist describes it is I was in a constant state of fight or flight, and I felt it. My nerves were racked. I still feel like I'm dealing with the effects, but I feel like there were some mornings I would look up and look in the mirror and it looked like I'd aged 10 years. Like, I just feel like my whole body was in a constant state of stress, which is not very fun. But yeah, so that's kind of, and it wasn't overnight. Like I said, it was like, started a few weeks after she was born and really hit the climax of that summer 2023, so when she was about 6 months old, because that's also when I returned to work. I don't know if have I announced this? I don't think so, because I think on my last video I was still working part-time. I'm no longer working. I guess technically I am. I do like per diem hours for my old job, so I'm technically still with them on the payroll when like a project pops up, but I'm not doing any kind of scheduled work. I'm not doing full-time, not even doing part-time. And part of the reason for that is like, I felt like I couldn't do anything. I couldn't work. I felt such immense guilt over my inability, I felt, to do a good job. And so that played a part of it. But also, again, talking about my anxiety, I tried many times to look up daycares and I couldn't do it. I would pull up the website, type in daycares near me, I'd click the link, I would see pictures, and I would start sobbing, like hyperventilating, sobbing, and this was every time. And I was like, you know what, I don't even, I'm not that passionate about my day job anyway. Like, it's not like this is I'm not like the most career driven in this field. You know, it's not like this was what I had envisioned doing my whole life. And I always felt like if I could afford to be a stay-at-home mom, I would anyway. And so it's not like I gave up a lot of things because of my anxiety, but it wasn't the plan. And so it was sort of a shock to me that we actually made it work. And I'm still very happy with it, by the way. I'm not like upset about it. Anyway, so it reached sort of the climax when I went back to work, though, because I did, like I said, plan on going back to work. So I went back to work full time in June 2023, and Zach's my husband, he had 6 weeks off left for his paternity leave. So Natasha still wasn't in daycare, but I technically was back to work full time, still mostly working from home. And I felt like I was dying. and that's all I could manage to get out. I felt like I was dying, and I don't know how to fully describe that feeling. It's not like I wasn't eating, it's not like that, but I stopped being able to sleep. Natasha has never been a great sleeper. She still cannot sleep very well, and I'll talk more about that later, but never been a great sleeper, and so I wasn't getting much sleep because of that anyway. She was waking, we're talking like every hour she would wake up, and I would nurse her, and so that already was happening. And then on top of it, I started getting insomnia. Not full-blown insomnia. It's not like I went the night without sleeping at all, but like Natasha would be down to sleep and I wouldn't be able to fall asleep despite being extremely exhausted. And so that most definitely played a role in how awful I felt. And yeah, come that summer, I just told Zach, like, I feel like I'm drowning, nobody can see it, and I just don't know how I'm supposed to keep going. Basically, that sounds really dark, and I wasn't depressed. I just felt I don't know how to keep doing this every day. Like, something is really wrong. Hello, sorry, I forgot. I'm reading over my 2024 letter to myself that I write at the end of every year, and I was describing how I felt over the summer, and I feel like I did a good job. And it was something I didn't mention, but I described feeling like that movie title, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I wrote, I could no longer compartmentalize. I thought about everything at once. I felt everything at once. I couldn't control my thoughts and emotions. It all just was crashing at me from all sides and within. I worried about everything, everywhere, all at once, and it drove me nearly insane. And I was a little bit dramatic with that last part, but I feel like that I forgot about that, but that was something that I frequently like used to describe how I was feeling and why I felt constantly overwhelmed. It just felt like everything was happening all at the same time. Like I couldn't turn off parts of my brain like how I used to be able to do. And I thought about everything I had to do. I thought about every worry, every fear, everything all at once. And then I wrote, I think I hid it decently well, but I know people saw the cracks. At family events, I always seem distant and almost shell-shocked. To be honest, being present during events is something I'm still working on. I just always have my eyes and mind on Natasha, so it's hard to be on in my own right. And that part has gotten easier, but that definitely was something I felt a lot in that first year. And I finally opened up to one of my best friends who also has 2 children. And so she connected me with like a postpartum therapist. Basically, she helped me because I told her, I was like, I just feel too overwhelmed to even look that up. Like, I don't want to look it up. I don't know how to describe it. And so I got help that way. And it was my therapist who actually diagnosed me with not postpartum anxiety, but general anxiety, moderate to mild, is that what she said? I don't know. Which was a huge shock to me. But you know, just talking about my life and how I deal with things and my feelings towards things, a lot of what I do can be attributed to general anxiety. With my coping is avoidance, and kind of like disassociating sounds like really severe, but just like checking out basically. Which is true, I definitely do that. So yeah, that happened. I started talking to her, I think it was August or July, and things thankfully have slowly gotten better from there. But yeah, sorry if I yapped too long about that. But I just kind of wanted to explain what it looked like for me, and yeah, the invasive thoughts were the worst of it, and just that constant feeling of worrying about her dying, that, oh my god, it was like the forefront of every part of my day and thought. And like, yeah, just like I break down sobbing thinking about her going to kindergarten and having to go to school because I live in the US, you know. And so, and anytime I would read a story, which of course in the US it's all the time, I'm like laughing but not laughing, of course, but you know, I've learned I have to stop reading news articles because it would just completely derail me for days. For days I would be sobbing about it. And yeah, I've Googled many times how to move to Canada. Zach even looked up finding a job in Scotland. There was one he could have applied to. Yeah, not having a fun time over here. But two, I just wanted to mention, with all that was going on, the worst part was I didn't tell anybody. I didn't talk to Zach about it. I didn't talk to friends or family. I kept all of those struggles completely to myself until that summer. I think because, again, I just didn't want anything to be wrong so much. I didn't want anything to be wrong because I finally had my baby and I was so happy, and she's like, you know, she's everything to me. And so I was angry at myself for ruining it, for having these struggles that I knew on a rational level were irrational. And I didn't want to have to think back to my first year postpartum and think about how terrible I felt. And so I think I thought by not mentioning it to anyone, I could push it down and not make it a big deal, and that eventually it would go away. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. Sorry, my cold is like, I'm not used to talking this much, so I'm getting more congested as I talk. So we gotta power through. We gotta get through this so it doesn't keep going. One thing I mentioned to my therapist too, and I'm getting better at this, but for some reason I think because I was pushing down so much, I didn't cry. Like, certain things would make me sob, but I would do it privately. I would wait for like to be showering and then I could cry in the shower, or I'd wait for Zach to go to bed and then I could cry when Zach was sleeping. I suddenly felt like I didn't want to cry around other people, and so even though before I don't have any problems crying around Zach or like loved ones, or even on like a YouTube video every now and then, suddenly I felt like I didn't want to cry in front of people. It made me really uncomfortable, and I think I know a lot of that had to do with the fact that I knew if I started crying, I don't know how I would stop. Like, I felt like I was penting up so much fear and emotion that I didn't want to like break the seal and start crying because it would get ugly. One thing I left out, I didn't go outside with Natasha on my own. Oh my gosh, I'd have to look on my Instagram. I think it was a couple months we didn't do anything, just us two, outside the house because I was terrified. It was also winter, so it's not like it was 70 and sunny out every day. I was afraid to go on walks because I thought someone was gonna attack us. So it just, I think, to summarize it, it was hard for me to understand how to let go of the fear, because it's not like, you know, people would say, oh, that won't happen, that's not very likely. And it's like, unless you can tell me with 100% certainty it's not gonna happen, then it's not comforting. And like, even just the thought of realizing one day that I will die and Natasha will die would send me into a ball of, I don't even know. It's just a very bad, dark mind space. One thing too early on that I would do is I would take a lot of pictures and videos, and this part makes me sad thinking about, but and I would do it because I thought, well, if I die or if Natasha dies, I'll at least have these pictures and videos to look back on. So I want to try and take as many as I can. And I think it goes without saying that's not a very healthy motivation of why you should be taking pictures and videos. But that's where my head was at for the first few months of her life. It's very sad looking back. I feel very sad for myself. But anyway, so that's how it affected me. And now how it affected my writing though, and kind of why my hobbies stopped. As I said, reading about certain things that involved my fears. So like anytime a child was in danger, anytime a child was suffering, or even parents, like Disney movies love to kill off moms, I swear. Anything like that, it would fill me with so much panic. And I would feel like on the verge of sobbing. And so I, like thinking back to my writing, so suddenly I just felt like I had to completely, like when I thought about returning to my book, I felt like I had to completely scrap everything, because in my book, like my main character, like spoiler or not, whatever, his mom is dead, and like it's that way at the start of the book. I just no longer felt like I could write that. I could no longer picture having a minor going through heartbreak. And so I just felt like if I was gonna go back to my book, I was gonna like scrub it and make it like the most G-rated thing, and I knew that's not exactly what I wanted. So I just felt like I couldn't write about anything interesting, because suddenly the idea of any kind of like heartbreaking thing broke my heart. And I even like had the thought, and I'm still not super opposed to this, where I was like, maybe I will only write like really happy things or not happy things, but just things where nobody dies, because like, again, that was kind of the root of my anxiety, was death. And so I didn't want to write any stories that involved that, because I already was having those fears so much during the day. And so I felt like I couldn't write, and if I couldn't write, I felt like I had nothing to update you guys on, because I don't want to just come on here and talk about how I can't write. Like, that's a one video thing. So that's sort of how it affected it. I stopped reading. Sorry. I stopped watching my favorite shows. One of my favorite shows I discovered postpartum was Lockwood & Co. I still recommend it. And thankfully I binged it like early postpartum before I got really affected by things. But I now, like, especially at my worst, struggled to want to rewatch it, because like these poor children are being forced to be terrified, or like in the show, like some of the kids die. I think in the books, do they die? I can't remember. The books are funnier than the show, so the books were a delight to read. But the show was really scary and dark at times, and you know, Lockwood's parent, well, I don't want to spoil it because it's too good to spoil. But anyway, I couldn't read Harry Potter. I watched Harry Potter because of the mistreatment of Harry and like him being at risk all the time. So that's what I mean, like things just really affected me. And so I stopped reading, stopped writing, stopped doing anything that brought me joy, essentially. I started seeing a therapist, like I said, summer of 2023. And one of the things she did that I really liked and responded well to was sort of walking through why it happens. And a lot of it is kind of intuitive too, but it makes sense why when you give birth, suddenly you're looking out for danger way more. You are way more protective. I know a lot of people use the bear analogy kind of to describe that constant fight or flight feeling, because you're constantly looking out for the bear, like you're trying to protect your young, and you are constantly scanning for dangers and picturing dangers. And so like her describing that made a lot of sense, and it definitely helped me feel less, like I said, crazy. Like I understood why I was feeling that way. And even though just understanding it doesn't help, but it just helps you feel like, I don't know, I didn't feel like anything was, it helped me think how nothing, oh my God, I cannot talk. It helped me realize that nothing was wrong with me, and that this was a very common thing that many, many postpartum parents go through, especially women who've given birth, because our hormones are playing a huge factor, if not the main factor in it as well. And then of course it kind of became a domino effect of, I was really anxious, so I was having trouble sleeping, and because I was having trouble sleeping, it was heightening my anxiety. And it just got to the point where it just was so bad. And I feel like the hardest part, the loneliest part was, like I said, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell Zach. I didn't tell my friends for the longest time. Didn't tell family. I just didn't want it to be true, so I didn't want to talk about it. And also, I admit there was some stigma of like, I should be happy. Like, I'm getting everything I ever wanted. I shouldn't be complaining that, oh, I'm a little scared, you know? Like, obviously I know that's not true, and that's being really harsh on myself, but it's kind of how I felt, and I felt like people would look at me funny. I don't know. And then of course too, I worried people would take it so much worse. Like, it's not like I had thoughts of harm, like I didn't want to harm her. It's not like I had thoughts of harming her like that. I had thoughts of something happening to her. And so I didn't want anyone to think that I was like this basket case about to crack. You know what I mean? Because I didn't feel that fragile. I just didn't feel right, and I didn't know how to talk about it. And it felt incredibly lonely and incredibly isolating, which again is another reason why I wanted to film this. But yeah, so sort of understanding the why, and then of course too, just delving in a personal way into my past to talk about like why I have general anxiety. Because like I said, she didn't diagnose me with postpartum anxiety, but instead general anxiety that was heightened during the postpartum period, if that makes sense. And so kind of delving into why I have general anxiety, which was like fun. But no, that's a video for another time. But yeah, kind of just learning more about my anxiety and why, how it represents its, or how it, what it looks like for me. Because, you know, I know people who have anxiety, and I kind of always pictured it as somebody like who looks super anxious all the time, who has panic attacks. You know, when I think anxiety, I think more of social anxiety, which I don't have. And so I was really surprised when she first told me that she thinks that I had it, because I don't fit what I thought anxiety looked like. But so yeah, for me, my general anxiety doesn't look like that. And for me, it looks like avoidance. I stop answering texts and calls, which I've done that since I was a child. Like, not that we had texts when I was a child, but oh my god, avoidance. Anyone who knows me knows that I do this, and I take sometimes days to respond to a text. And that's sort of like my first clue now that I realize, oh, I'm kind of going through, or I'm starting to go through a rough patch because I've been avoiding people. And also, procrastination. That kind of goes in hand with avoidance. But she's like spewing all these things, my therapist, and I'm like, oh my god, it all makes sense. And it was so liberating and freeing in a way too, because for the longest time, and I try to be very gentle with myself, maybe more so than most people are with themselves, but I am a big procrastinator, and I always attributed it to me being lazy. Like, you know, you just think negative things. But to get to the root of why I procrastinate, and it's because it's like, well, I want to do a good job, and unless I'm in the mindset where I know I can focus in and do a good job, I'm afraid to even start because it's then not going to be a good job. And I don't know if that makes sense, but just realizing that that was anxiety and that's why I am the way I am, and I don't know, everything just kind of like clicked into place. And so here I was at 31 years old, finally figuring out why I am the way that I am. It was very enlightening. So yeah, that was started last summer. It is now, as of filming this, December 2024, so about a year and a half in. And I am thankfully in like the world better place. Such a better place. I was gonna say great place. I think there's always room for improvement, but it's been a really helpful year and a half. I feel like I've come a long way, and I feel like, oh, my daughter's outside the door. Who is it? Hi, Tashi, where's Dada? Go get Dada. She's not used to me doing other things. Okay, I'm gonna speed this along. So I saw her weekly for a while, and then it went to bi-weekly, and now we do kind of like, we're gonna do seasonal check-ins, so like every 6 to 8 weeks, just to make sure we're still doing good, which I'm very thankful for. So I feel like I could talk longer about it. I'm sure there's things I meant to bring up that I left out, but that was sort of what I've been dealing with the last year and a half, and what I've been trying to recover from and find myself in a better space than ever. And I'm happy to report, like I said, I am doing so much better. And of course, I thought this wouldn't be very helpful unless I talked about what I've done to help. Because I would say, for anyone who's freshly postpartum or who's in those first 6 months, I started to feel mentally different around 9 months postpartum. I felt like around 9 months is when I no longer felt like I was in this fog. Before that, I felt overwhelmed even going to somebody's house with Natasha because I could not focus on Natasha, and it was hard for me to hold conversations. It was hard for me to like enjoy what was going on. I think about her first holidays, and anytime we did something outside the house, I did not have a good time, which is so sad. I don't want it to be that way, and I don't want to be like having to be stuck in my house to feel relaxed. Like, I did not want to start heading down that road, though I certainly started to. But okay, what helped? First and foremost, and this one is kind of obvious, sleep. This one's also very frustrating because as a postpartum mom, it is not always in your control. So this one sucks, but it is by far the thing I've noticed makes the most direct impact on how I feel, how many invasive thoughts I'm having that day, and just my general outlook on things. But as I said, that summer I was dealing with a little bit of insomnia on top of a baby waking up every hour, and working full-time again and trying to like be a human. That was sort of my primary care doctor and my therapist's number one focus for me, was trying to get more sleep, and so that going through like all the healthy sleep habits, learning what worked for me and what didn't. Like, one tip with sleep I got that actually made a big difference was if you've been lying in bed for longer than 20 minutes trying to fall asleep, to do something else, which sounds counterintuitive, but you know, when you're just lying in bed, you can't fall asleep, and then like an hour passes or 2 hours pass and you feel like you're losing your mind. Don't do that. Basically, after 20 minutes, if I couldn't fall asleep, my therapist had said to actually like get up and leave the room. I didn't do that, but I did just pick up a book, usually a boring book, and I would start reading. And eventually that would help me get more tired and I could fall asleep or attempt to fall asleep again. If that didn't work, do the process over. And it sounds counterintuitive because you don't want to like be awake, but it helps sort of like reset the brain, because like the worst thing you can do is to start thinking about it. As anyone who struggled with sleep knows, like, you just get into a vicious cycle. I think that was probably the most helpful sleep tip for me. Of course, there's other ones too, like not being on your phone for an hour before bed, blah, blah, blah. I don't really pay attention to those as much. But yeah, that one helped a lot. And that's still sort of my go-to now if I'm like, it doesn't happen as much nearly anymore, but if I'm having a struggling sleep moment, I'll grab my Kindle and start reading, and that helps. Another thing that finally helped, of course, was talking about it and opening up to my friend who connected me with my therapist, and then of course talking to my therapist, and then opening up to Zach about it more too. Or even just reading about others' experiences online helped me feel much less alone. Kind of on that note too, of like opening it up to myself. One step I made, I feel like, I don't know when this happened. I'd have to look it up on Goodreads. I was reading a book, and it was 9 Perfect Strangers by Leanne Moriarty. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I feel like that book, honest to God, changed my life because it was the exact right book that I needed to read in that moment. And I think what happened was I was reading it, and this is when I knew I was getting better, because I was reading it, and one of the things that sends me into a dark place, the theme came up, which I don't want to spoil the book too much, but it was child death. And I started to realize it was like one of the characters, it was in their story, and it was going to talk about it. And normally what I would do is shut it and walk away and just shut it down and stop reading it. But I was really enjoying this book, and I didn't want to stop. And so I decided to power through, and it was hard. I cried so much, but afterwards I felt so renewed. I felt like it was like I needed that ugly cry and I continued to cry throughout the book, but it was like fiction almost gave me like this safe space to cry about this thing, because I could then, if it got to be too much, I could remind myself it's not real, and that helped a lot. But yeah, I think being honest with myself and just trying to get back into things I enjoy instead of hiding from everything was helpful. Hiding from things, like, obviously it's one thing, you don't want to trigger yourself, but you don't want to hide from life either. Another thing that helped, I kind of talked about this already too, but understanding nothing was wrong with me and that this was a very normal reaction for postpartum that helped a lot. And like, obviously it didn't help healing itself, but just it helped me feel, yeah, I don't know, just it's nice to feel like nothing's wrong with you. You know what I mean? I think too, understanding my anxiety, understanding that it was just trying to help me, you know, it's trying to keep my daughter safe, it's trying to alert me to look out for dangers. I think getting to the root of that is helpful, because in moments where I'm like really stressing about it, I know I can be like, okay, I'm just trying to be protective of my daughter. There's not actually a danger here. Like sometimes I'll just look around and be like, nope, no bear. Like, we're safe here. We don't need to be anxious. And that doesn't always help immediately, but I think over time it's made a difference. Another thing too, just to sort of make myself feel more comfortable in my own skin and life, learning that, and this is a lesson I think we all know, but it's nice to have a refresher, that it's okay to say no and do what I feel is best for her and myself, and that I don't need to explain that to anybody else. That one's very helpful. And kind of on that same note, one thing I've done in therapy is learn to stop entertaining toxic people if the relationship is only benefiting them and it's not benefiting or even harming me or my family. This one, it seems obvious, but it is really difficult when you have toxic, close family, close friends, just people in your life, to make that final call that you're no longer going to put up with it can be very difficult, but it is something that I've done this year. And I will say it's easier than I thought it would be. Like, you know, you work up in your head how hard it's going to be if you ever decided to be so definitive about it. But then, I don't know, it's been very peaceful in that way ever since. So, good for me. Another thing too is focusing on something else. I think it doesn't help that, you know, like I said, a lot of my anxiety is avoidance, like, or that's how I deal with it. And what happens though is I get myself in like such my own cave that it's hard to think about other things other than what I'm currently thinking about, which is stressful things. I wrote in my notes, focus on something else, aka get a life. And but no, I think this was important. Getting back into my hobbies again. Started with just reading again, which was awesome. Even though it had its own struggles, I started doing just some other things. Like this past summer 2024, I joined a choir, which was really fun. I'm not like the best singer in the world, but it was like a summer program thing where they took anyone, and it was really nice. What other things have I done? I don't know, I've just done some other things here and there, but not even just about like committing to clubs and hobbies like that, but just, yeah, seeing your friends more. One thing I really want to do is put a garden in our new house. We moved, we're in a house, and I want to build a nice beautiful garden. That was a little bit trickier with a toddler, so that might have to wait a couple years, but something like that. Or focusing on these videos again, which is what I'm hoping for this year, 2025, this coming year. Another thing that helped, and this one was hard for me because it's not usually how I operate, but I had to stop reading super upsetting things. Like, you know, it's one thing to want to read like fiction or watch shows that I love again and trying to kind of desensitize myself a little bit to it, but you know, I just had to learn that now is not the season where I can extend myself and read other people's struggles, and that's okay. That time will come again. So like, for example, shortly after I had Natasha, or it was in that first year, I can't remember, there were the Turkey earthquakes, and it was very upsetting. And there were a lot of stories about parents or families being trapped, or of course like what's going on. I don't want my video to get flagged, but insert world horror here, whichever what that looks like for you. And before, I always felt I needed to read these people's stories, hear their stories, and do the best I could to spread their message so that they could get help. You know, whether it was donating or just sharing. And I have just learned I am not in that season of life. And that is hard to accept because, of course, there's people who don't understand, and there's people who think you need to have your hand dipped in and help everyone at all times. But I've just learned it is okay to accept that you are not in a place where you could be helpful. And that was definitely me my first year postpartum. So essentially I stopped reading news articles. I actually listened to trigger warnings. If a trigger warning mentioned that something was upsetting, I didn't read it. And that it helped me stop like taking 10 steps backwards where I start to feel better, but then I read something really upsetting and I'd get thrown off track. So that is that. And then of course there is always the option to take medication, and I don't want to come off like that I am against medication. I am most definitely not. But I personally did not take medication. My anxiety, I didn't feel was that peak bad. I mean, maybe that summer it was. I probably should have taken it that summer, to be honest. But shortly after that summer is when I went to part-time, and it got a lot better just from doing that. But there's definitely nothing wrong with taking medication. But I kind of just wanted to bring it up, the whole idea of medication, to show like I did not take it. And I still was able to get better in time. And so if you are super against it for whatever reason, or if, I think one of the reasons I was nervous to see a therapist was I thought they were almost not going to give me a choice. Like, you have to take medication. You're having postpartum anxiety, you have to take medication, which you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. And again, nothing is wrong with medication. I really want to stress that. I am open. I think if I go through this again, having a second baby, I will take medication. Like, because now I know how long it takes for me to feel better, and it's like I don't want to feel like crap again that long. So yeah, obviously I'm not against it, but it is possible if you just really don't want to go that route. Like, I think one of the big reasons I didn't want to do it is I didn't want to deal with finding the right medication. It just felt so overwhelming, and it was like I don't want to like take the chance of feeling worse, because I feel bad, but I don't feel that bad, and so I didn't want to, I don't know. I would say it was about 20 months from when it started to when it lifted. I was around 20 months postpartum when I was like, wait, whoa, I think I might be back to my normal. There are still moments. If I have a few days in a row of not getting much sleep, I start to feel things coming back. I start to feel invasive thoughts again. I start to notice that I'm in kind of going downhill again. So I know to get my sleep back in order. But around 20 months, there was moments where I had prioritized sleep, and all of a sudden I just was like, wait, I feel like myself. What? I'm feeling like myself again. This is amazing. And I wish I could say I continue that great feeling every day. It's not a linear healing journey, but I can confirm I still am feeling so much better. It is the best feeling. I never want it to go away. I'm so afraid of having another baby and going through this again. But yeah, but I take so much hope and joy out of knowing with confidence, since I've done it before, it will get better. And that's what I wanted to be the driving point of this video. For anybody who's watching, who's gone through it, who might go through in the future, it does get better, and it just sometimes takes time, it takes effort, but you will be yourself again one day. I promise. Because that's what I need to hear. So I wanted to be that one to tell you. I guess now, what do things look like for me now? I still avoid things that I know are going to be super upsetting, but I'm getting better. I'm trying to slowly enjoy things I love again and not be too irrationally sensitive. I realized that a lot of the horrors and shows I was trying to avoid, they're not for me. It felt personal. It felt like, how dare they include a mother dying? Like, why would they do that? That's so upsetting. Why would anyone think that's entertaining content? I don't understand. But I think one thing that was eye-opening, I was watching, this might be a slight spoiler, I was watching Indiana Jones, the newest one that came out in 2023, and spoiler, there's a child death. I'll just leave it at that. Not an actual child, but somebody's child dies. And I was really upset by it. I was like trying to hold it together. I was trying not to cry. I was like, oh God, I've been enjoying this movie, and like, why do they have to ruin it? And then I was on Reddit actually, and I was reading, and somebody had commented that they were so thankful that that was a plot line because they had also lost their child, their adult child, and it gave them such a strong connection to that character because they were going through it too. And it just hit me then that it was like, that's who it's for. That's who all of this is for. Like when, you know, and I knew that, but I had forgotten it, where it's like, you know, I have in my book, one of my characters has a toxic family member, which is something I've dealt with. And I'm not doing it because I'm trying to make this character edgy. I'm doing it because I want another kid to read it one day and realize they're not alone. And it's like, I think I needed that reminder. These horrors that people include in their stories, these tragedies, it's not just to make their characters like have an interesting background, but it's to help others who've lived it feel less alone and to show that someone else has been there too. And that is really powerful in writing and in filmmaking and just any kind of connection. That's just a human connection. So that helps me too. And I think it's helped me see past a little bit of my fear of watching shows and movies and seeing something upsetting happen and just reminding myself, this isn't for me. Like, this is for somebody who's been through it and needs to feel less alone. Whew. I think I yapped enough. Someone I was talking to recently talked about, they called me a yapper. I yap a lot. Oh my God, that's an amazing word, and I'm gonna bring it back. Like, I don't feel people say it enough, yapper. So I'm trying not to yap too much. As I've been talking, my snuffles have been getting worse and worse. My hair looks like a mess. I swear I showered. It's okay. We're just living. If you are struggling with this, or I don't know, you just want to feel less alone, please know I've been there. And feel free to comment, message me, whatever. I'm happy to talk to you about it because I know how isolating it can feel. That's it. Again, I'm sure there's way more I wanted to mention, but it's probably for the best I don't. This video is long enough. I'm looking forward to coming back. I have 3 videos I've already filmed, but I wanted this to be the one I came back to because I feel like this best explains sort of where I've been and why I've been gone. Obviously, raising a child is time-consuming in itself. Now I have hiccups. That really wasn't the root of why I've been struggling to fit in time for my hobbies. Really, I've been working on myself and trying just to get back to me, and I feel like I'm winning the battle. I've won the battle. I'm declaring it. I've won. And I'm looking forward to getting back to this and doing things that make me me again. I look forward to chatting more about that in my next video, which will be sooner than later. I don't know when. How soon should I put these out? Every week? Is that too ambitious? That's probably too ambitious. We'll see what I do. It will be a surprise to both of us. Okay, goodbye guys. Happy New Year. Happy 2025. Favorite holiday. It's gonna be a good one. I can tell. Okay, bye. Oh my God. Sorry, I'm so mad at my cold right now. Sorry, I'm so annoyed at my nose. I cannot even. I'm trying to film this freaking video and I can't breathe. Oh my God. And yes, I'm having a glass of wine because I'm having a moment for myself. And I feel like I have a red patch on my forehead that's very distracting. I'm having a rough time. Oh my god. It's so distracting. Oh my god. What was I talking about? This is a mess. My eyes are getting all puffy. Sorry, I look like I'm dying, but it's because I'm just so angry that I'm coughing. I'm sick of coughing. I just want to film this video. Oh my gosh, I look so puffy because of my sniffling.